Okay, cool. So, hey there. My name is Kara, and tonight is our very first webinar in KSEC's media webinar series. And yeah, we're really excited to help folks get some skills on how to use media to tell the story of your organization or your campaign story, and how to develop a message that's strategic. So I wanted to start by introducing myself a little bit. So like I said, my name is Kara, and I'm the Kentucky organizer with the Kentucky Student Environmental Coalition. And growing up, I always loved being outside. I spent a lot of time playing outside as a young person, and it really had no idea the impact that that people were having on the environment until I got to college and I started taking some environmental courses. And when I first started to realize about the impact that we were having, I got really angry. I got really angry at people for being so careless with our natural resources, and I got really angry thinking about how a lot of other folks' choices were impacting my future. And I really wasn't sure how to make a difference or if I could make a difference. But luckily, I found our environmental club on campus, and I met a group of folks who were really dedicated to figuring it out and to figuring out how we could make a change happen on our campus. I also got the opportunity to go to a Power Shift conference, which is a national conference, and to be surrounded by literally 12,000 other young people who were committed to making change happen around environmental issues. And that was really inspiring to me because it showed me that I could make a difference on my campus and my community. And not only that, but that I was part of something really big called the Youth Environmental Movement. And so I went back to campus, I started making changes happen, I started organizing and working on campaigns, and I was so excited and inspired by the youth climate movement and the youth environmental movement that I decided that I would make it my career, to help young people learn skills and figure out ways to get involved and make change happen. And now we're here, and we have the Kentucky Student Environmental Coalition, which is a huge resource, a way to connect with other young people and to share ideas, but also to get access to different kinds of skills that help us to be effective community organizers, like this media training that we're doing. And today we're going to learn about how we can develop a story and use that story to make a difference in our campuses and in our communities. So I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about why storytelling is important. And the first one is really simple. Storytelling is how we share information for ages. Basically, since humans began communicating with each other, we've used stories to talk about the world around us and to help other people to connect to different experiences that we've had. It's much more entertaining than just the facts. So telling a story helps people to connect to what you're talking about without boring them. And it's motivational. We can use stories to help connect to shared values. And if we're going to win on the big campaigns that we know we need to see happen in the world, we're going to need people to make real commitments and sacrifices and to stay committed over the long haul. And this sort of commitment doesn't come from ideas or taking constant action, but it comes from a deep connection to our values. And so we can motivate people by using stories to convey our real lived experiences and help others see themselves as part of the movement and feel connected to the emotions and values of our stories. So tonight we're going to talk about two different kinds of stories. The first type is a personal narrative. And a personal narrative is a story like I told at the beginning of this webinar. It tells a little bit about yourself and what you're doing, and it also offers other people a way to get involved. Personal narratives take a lot of time to develop and it takes practice to figure out how to tell them. When I first learned about personal narratives as an organizing tool, I was really put off because I didn't think I had any sort of motivational story to tell. But I promise that you do, and if you keep working at it, you'll find something that's really great. The second type of story is an organizational narrative or a campaign narrative. And these are broader stories about what our organization is doing or what our campaign is doing. And so an example of an organizational narrative I can tell is about KSEC. So KSEC was formed in 2007 when a group of young Kentuckians came together and realized that they not only could make a difference, but they really wanted to make a difference and build a future where they could stay in Kentucky. And so original founders of KSEC wanted to focus on creating green jobs, ending mountaintop removal, and improving their campuses. And so throughout the years, we've been motivating and inspiring and training youth leaders in Kentucky to make those things happen. And right now, we all are a part of KSEC. Any young person in Kentucky who wants to see positive change happen, wants to protect our environment and transition to a sustainable economy can be a part of this movement. And not only are we all a part of KSEC, but together we're already doing it. In the last year, we've won several campaigns. We've trained over 200 young people in grassroots organizing skills. We've grown to over 1,200 members at 25 different campuses. KSEC members are meeting with legislators, and we're making shit happen right now. And there are lots of ways for everyone to get involved, from attending these webinars to joining one of our working groups to launching campaigns on your campus. And so hopefully after this webinar series, you're going to want to get involved with KSEC. So that's an example of what an organizational narrative might sound like. A campaign narrative is similar, but it goes into depth about what your campaign is, talking about who the target is, what your goals are and what you want to see happen, the tactics that you've used and what's happened when you've done those tactics, and sort of describing what comes next in the campaign and how people can get involved. So I wanted to talk just for a quick second about the different parts of the story. You might recall some of these things from English class. So a good story has characters. It has a plot that involves a challenge, which is what makes it interesting, a choice, showing what you did as a result of that challenge, and the outcome, or how did it all play out. Also, a good story contains a moral, where there's a real strong point of your story that calls on people's values. In organizing, sometimes we call this, or sometimes we think about organizing stories as having a story of self, a story of us, and a story of now. The story of self being a little bit about yourself, the story of us talking about the shared experiences that we have, and the story of now telling us why now is an urgent time to get involved and take action. Thinking back about the stories that I told, can you recognize some of these things in those stories? So I want to move away from storytelling in general to talking more about developing a message or developing strategic messaging. And so strategic messages are messages that, sorry, having issues here. Okay, so strategic messages are messages that address the problem, solution, have a call to action, and talk about the benefits of what you're doing. So for example, a lot of our campuses are working on climate action campaigns, trying to get the university to commit to a climate action plan that will address greenhouse gas emissions on campus and work towards eventual carbon neutrality. So if the topic is a climate action plan, we can talk about the problems of climate change and carbon emissions. We can talk about the problems of health impacts on our communities and on our campuses. We can talk about a lot of different problems. We can also talk about a solution, being to take an inventory of greenhouse gases and come up with a plan for addressing those problems. We also want to make sure we have a call to action. In this scenario, a call to action might be sign our petition to get a climate action plan. Or the call to action might be geared towards our university president to make the commitment to reaching carbon neutrality. And then we can talk about the benefits. The benefits being better air quality, less drastic impacts from climate change, The benefits could also be things like making our university look more appealing to new recruits. And so once we have sort of thought about our message, we also want to think about framing and what makes that message strategic. So strategic messages are just statements and prompts that target audiences to take desired actions. And you want to take into account your target audience and their values. So we don't always want to tell the same exact story. Our story really should be geared towards who we're talking to. And when we're talking to folks, we sort of want to find this sweet spot between our desire as an organization and the audience's desire to find this sort of frame that works for who we're talking to. So when we're thinking about messaging, audiences really matter, and why we're telling the story really matter. We're going to tell a totally different story when we're doing recruitment and trying to get people to join our organization than we are when we're sitting down with a decision maker and trying to get them to say yes to our campaign goal. So who is your audience and what are their values? And the best way for us to figure out what someone's values are to have conversations and build a relationship with them. We don't want to assume we know what people's values are. We actually want to have a conversation, find out what those things are, and then be able to specifically tailor our message or our story to the people that we're talking to. This is also known as sort of the frame that someone has for seeing the world. So we can think about values as being different frames that people use to think about information. So here I've listed some common frames that people might carry. You know, maybe there's a value of family or community, job creation, human health, tradition, religion, safety, progress, or freedom. Your message should be able to tailor to any of these frames. Your message is sort of big and broad and contains all of these different values. And so when we're thinking about who we're talking to, we want to use a specific frame to sort of narrow our message down into those values that they care most about. So I wanted to go ahead and give an example, and I'm going to use the KSEC Power to the People campaign in this example. And our political working group is a group of folks from all across the state working on renewable energy legislation. And they're currently running a campaign called the Power to the People campaign, which is aimed at getting legislation passed around renewable energy and energy efficiency, specifically a renewable energy portfolio standard, as well as incentivizing decentralized energy production that not only allows us to transition towards renewable energy, but to have more individual control over where energy comes from when faced with dealing with our current energy monopolies. So here's some examples of some of our messages that are tailored for different frames. So using the frame of family. A lot of times families are really concerned with the future for their children. And so in that instance, we might use a message around youth unemployment. So currently youth unemployment is almost 17% in Kentucky, which is nearly double the state average of unemployment. And we need to create jobs so that young people want to stay in Kentucky. Renewable energy creates jobs in the manufacturing, retail, engineering, and construction sectors, which allow young people to stay in the state after graduation. The frame of health. Kentucky has the highest rates of asthma in the nation, and our health continues to decline due to air and water pollution. Investing in renewable energy and energy efficiency will have positive effects on our health. Economy. The Clean Energy Opportunity Act would create 28,000 net new jobs in Kentucky over the next 10 years and add over $1.5 billion to the gross state product during that same period. So as you can tell, there are lots of different ways for us to use messaging and framing to tell our stories. And stories are a really important way for us to get out the word about what we're doing and help encourage other people to take action with us. We can use our stories in recruitment and in campaigning and in the media as a way to get our message out to the broader audience and bring more people on board. So now I want to just take some time at the end of this webinar for any questions that folks might have.
Not at this time.
Great. So were there any things that you learned during this webinar that you think are going to be really useful for you?
Just how to organize the story and how to reach your target audience with your message, I guess you could say.
Cool. Is there anything from this webinar that's still a little bit confusing?
No.
Awesome. Cool. So I want to just go ahead and let you know about our next webinar that's coming up. It'll be in a week from today at the same time. And we'll be talking about social media and how we can use social media to build our base and get more people involved and inspire our members to take action. Thanks for joining us, and I hope this was useful. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to work with you more one-on-one in actually utilizing these skills and putting them to work on your campus.
Okay.
Have a great night.
You too.